Quite a contrast, of course, to what comes next, because as the Victorian times get going, then the Victorians throw all that interest in symmetry and so on out the window. They go for a very asymmetrical approach to house building and lots of decoration. They go for fancy bricks, rich tiles, barge boards, bay windows, elaborate porches, and so on. With the emphasis on variety and being different to your neighbours, customising to meet your own needs, and so on. This one is in Albert Road, which is a nice name for houses. They're big, quite splendid, but the nice thing about these Victorian houses is that they built them all shapes and sizes according to people's pockets. So travel through the sort of cross section of a town and see modest ones or grand ones like that, see ones like this, which perhaps the bank clerk, so the bank manager, smaller than it's only detached and so on. And what I found I was doing was taking photographs like this, where perhaps I've got one of a pair reasonably original, window details are original, which files and branch reports and so on. But next door has already begun to change, hasn't it? And in that talk, we call that change improvement. Okay? So I started thinking, when I do take pictures of just ordinary houses, I will look for ones with a bit of contrast between them, so we can actually think about this business improvement. So, with Marines at Wolverhampton, this is here, two houses joined together, the one on the left, reasonably original, fence at the front and so on. But next door has changed, hasn't it? Brickwork has been rendered, the roof has been redone, the window detail has obviously changed, even the wall has changed. Who has done the improving? Well, the Housing Association has done the improving under what were called housing action areas. Government established the Housing Corporation, which funded the renewal of houses in areas, the refurbishment of them, with the idea of giving them an extra 30 years life. That's in the 1960s, so now outlived that 30 years extra life they were supposed to gain through these improvements. And now, not so cruel, they were improved, weren't they?
Yeah.
And they were, because they did put that rather limit on themselves. They were saying, well, let's just do them up to give them another 30 years life. We'll spend a bit more money, perhaps have better ways of improving, stood the test of time, better. Some of the improved ones will now have gone through their second waves of improvement. This business of changing a house, going through the process of improvement, is interesting because you come to a terrace like that in Walsall, next to the entrance to Wingfield Park, and you can see perhaps got 5 houses along there, but one has started to improve, as they pushed his front room forward, started to change his window detail upstairs, and in a way it messes up the homogeneous sort of feeling of the whole terrace. So what you do affects the whole area. And that, some more pictures as we go on. There's very late 1890s or even early 1900s buildings, beautiful windows on the end house where you actually entrance to the park. You can see the effect of improvements there. Because we're coming into the beginning of the 20th century, it's worth having a look at these houses in Wolverhampton that were erected in 1905. They're on the main Birmingham Road, out of the centre of Wolverhampton. They straight onto the road. I used to drive past them regularly. I never really understood exactly what they were. I knew they were council houses. I started to look into it and I found they were actually pioneering council houses in Wolverhampton. The first laws that came into effect that enabled local authorities to enter the housing field, put up municipal housing, date back to the 1880s. Birmingham used to have some very nice 1880s council houses, but they demolished them all in order to provide land to extend the university. We in Wolverhampton kept these for a while, but eventually I got more interested and I went down to the car dealership at the end there, went up on their roof and photographed the same road from the back. And when I saw them from the back, I thought, oh, wait a minute, that's strange. They've got steps up and the balcony around to another door. Second level there. And I went to the archives in Wolverhampton and got out plans and said, well, that's how they were originally built. It's not a change. They are actually a ground floor flat with 2-story masonette above. And I never would have realised that without having just through the fire. You have to sort of go around the house and probably have to go into the house. So have a look. But looking on those plans that they've got in the archives in Wolverhampton, I noticed that the chimneys actually took flues from 4 flats. And when I eventually went into them, I found the fireplaces were at 45 degrees across the corner of the room. So share. So again, you really need sometimes to get inside the buildings or see the plans to understand what's really going on. There was a bit of an argument about whether the Black Country Museum at some stage should actually open satellite sites around the Black Country. They should go to the Rock Museum, for example. There was a debate about whether the Black Country Museum would perhaps preserve one of these, but it wouldn't really work to demolish the rest of the terrace, would it? And Black Country Museum it did mean they had to be demolished. They had gone. That's the big buildings. Shame. Anyway, they were erected in 1905, and I thought it was interesting to show you another house in Wolverhampton, erected in 1905, which is there. I know that was built in 1905 because I bought it. And I bought it with this idea of house improvement in mind. So at the end of the street, in the garage, got that garage down, another floor on top, would extend to the side, and so on. And that introduced me, personally, very personally, to what happens to you when you go to the house improvement. Because I thought I could just extend my house to the right, carry the roof on. But when I talked to the planners, they said, oh, no, you cannot do that. You've got an attic window up there, and therefore the highest you can actually build your extension is to the windowsill of that window. Extension roof will have no rest of the house. I said, well, I want to continue the quartz bricks, because where they come through the sills of the upper story, I want to carry them onto the extension, but they'll go right through the middle of the upstairs window, and that's the case. Drop that on. But they wanted to see the colour of the brick I was using and all sorts of things. So we were very fussy about all sorts of things. But I found out that because you're the home improver, all sorts of things have a life of their own. For example, I looked at the ridge tiles, which are alternate tiles across the top of the roof. And I found they were made by the Ashington Brick and Tile Company, and I could still get them at £120 a tile. So I complained to Builder, who's working with me on this, and he said, oh, you don't go by there, you go to the scrapyard of builders' material. I went down there and went in to lots of ridge tiles, and he said, oh, is that your state car outside? I said, well, open the boot and I'll fill it for 20 quid. So he gave me a whole boot full of ridge tiles. So of course, I then put ridge tiles right across the extension, not matching the original building. And it was on the way out of the yard, he said, would you fancy an orb? I said, what's an orb? He said, it's a big round thing you stick on the end of your wall. I said, oh, all right. So you opened the boot and you threw that in as well. Because that wasn't the plans. I was going to have an orb on the end of my wall, but I could see what happened. House improvement is a sort of organic exercise in which things change as the thing goes on. Make up also the details about matching windowsills and proportions of windows. On the other hand, also things you haven't planned happen when you do it. And that's why houses change. You see how to change there. After living there 41 years, so it's an interesting house to live. Right. 1905, well, we'll have to rush through that Edwardian period, because along comes the First World War, moratorium on house construction. At the end of the First World War, Lloyd George goes around the country making lots of speeches, and while making a speech in Wolverhampton, and yet he says that in the period after the First World War, his government will build homes fit for heroes. quite use exactly those words. That's how it came out. It came a slogan, homes fit for vehicles. The idea was that national government, prime local authorities, most of which would be very reluctant to enter the municipal housing field, but there would be ring-fenced funds that local authorities would have, which they had to build council houses. Which there's also forecasts about how many council houses be expected local authorities to build and so on. So you get a massive wave, 1919, 1920, 1921, of the first real big invasion of Britain by council houses. And this is an estate of such houses, Admiral Estate in Wolverhampton. When I took the photograph, they weren't demolished 2 weeks later, they were refurbished 2 weeks later. Which is interesting because as I took this photograph, somebody came running out from behind one of those hedges, said, "What the bloody hell are you doing?" Which is what happens when I go around with my camera. And in the Black Country, that's always followed by, "Would you like to come in and have a cup of tea?" So I go in and I have a cup of tea, and again, I saw things by going in the house that I would never have guessed just from looking at the outside. For example, as I went into the front room of one of these houses, I looked up and there was no plaster ceiling, just looked at the joists of the bedroom floor. Canvas had been stretched over that, and above the canvas was the floorboards of the bedrooms. Chap who invited me in, painted the canvas white and painted black, beautifully front room. Then he showed me a fresh water tank in the back, which was original, to the design of the building, and he invited me into the kitchen while he was making the tea, and we both couldn't stand in the kitchen at the same time. Well, I said that was kitchen designed by man. About 6 foot square. In fact, the larder at the back is bigger than the kitchen. Outside, the larder outside, blue. The only blue. So it's those sort of details you discover in it by going in. So when you're going to explore houses, make sure you seem to be taking a photograph. Somebody will shout out to you and be quite rude to you, and then they invite you in to have a look around. He also showed me that on most of the houses anyway, there was still the local authority coat of arms. Even where people had rendered their home, you could still see the notice coat of arms. This was 1921. And once you spotted these, you could around spotting the backs of houses for their dates, name of the local authority, rating of time, and so on. Yeah, even the paint has got halfway, isn't it? Yeah, the magnolia on the left. It nicely bisects the Wolverhampton coat of arms. I look out for these. Sometimes now, because the tenants' right to buy and all that, people are bought these houses and doing them up. But again, I take them in pairs sometimes where one side has changed for all the others. And in this case, they've chosen to paint the coat of arms black, they've kept it, picked out the date, and so on. Another initiative that many local authorities took in that interwar period was to work with local builders, trying to iron out some of the real ups and downs of the local house building scene. And with these houses, which are on the estate of the old estate, the agreement was that if the builder could build them to a fixed price agreed with the local authority would guarantee to provide a mortgage. There's no problem actually have that for that to sell the houses in county. There are a number of estates built on that system of a guarantee local authority mortgage available on condition of building. Now again, in taking the pairs, because the one on the right is already started on the improvement business, that's started changing the windows. At the time I was looking around, the estate was just getting itself organised as a sort of local residents association. And they're starting to say that if people aren't going to go into new modern windows and so on, can they try and keep them in the original style? Could they try and retain the original rather orange tiles used on the roof and so on? So there was some awareness that there would be some advantage to trying to preserve the uniformity of the designs of the houses. The estate was such a small estate. That was the 1920s. Obviously, if we go on into the 1930s, we get to the Baco house, the 1930s, three-bedroom semi. Large numbers of these in every town, I'm sure. But to the kid who was brought up on the Waco building, they're quite interesting because some of the things in this building I could replicate, other things I could not. I could do the porch, I had a set of piece that could do that. I didn't have the herringbone brickwork, just the bump of the porch, and I certainly couldn't taper a bay. I had a bay on the ground floor, it'd be exactly the same on the next floor. So it's quite interesting for me as the ex-Waco building to look at these houses, think how they are reflected as kids. Vast numbers built by the private sector, of course, and it's nice to look at the period adverts. Here's one from 1935 in the local paper. You can see you bought one of these for £425. I know if you're realistic about this, you have to think about the changing value of money. It's just something fascinating about seeing a three-bedroom semi for £425. With a scheme for £25 deposit. And if you can't afford the £25 deposit, then a £5 deposit, and then you save up until you got the 25, and then you eventually make negotiations to buy the house. But these sort of mortgage arrangements and these enticements and so on helped vast numbers of 1930s three-bedroom semis to be built all over. Meanwhile, in the 1930s, there are changes going on in the building trade. There are new things happening. For example, there is the chiselled metal window and the ability to curve glass. So these kind of windows that swept round the corner films became popular. And of course, there's a sort of Art Deco influences of modern effect on the design of the building. Will be a proper architect involved and so on. And this one's got 4 such windows just for measure. I do look for such houses. Often they're quite hidden by trees, but they're visible. Here's a couple that I spotted. This one up here on the left, spotted in Edgbaston. And it's interesting, it's been served, I think, by somebody quite sensitive to its original 1930s characteristics. They've chosen pastel shades to make the rendering there in the colours of the time. It's a corner house and stuff obscuring it to get a nice view of that kind of return to a simple geometric approach by architecture when it comes to house design. And then there's one down the bottom right hand corner from Brixham in Devon, which you might find actually seaside resorts are quite good places to find such houses. Or with Bay, for example, it's fairly recently. So the 1930s does introduce a return to a more classical approach. It does produce something new, new technologies and so on involved in it. And again, there were variations of different size pockets. If you were fairly modest income and so on, then you have to buy a semi. There's a bit of advertising semi with those curved windows with the concrete porch, very characteristic of the times. And you often found they were built in sort of river development along main roads, the new main roads, trunk roads of Britain in the interwar years. There's 2 on the main road down on the right. And again, just by looking slightly to the left of those, I could find one where there's one where the owner has tried to restore it to its original state. The one on the left has been improved. And this is the point in the talk where you realise this talk is actually going to give you lots of practical ideas that you can carry out for yourself. It's like if you've got some crazy paving and you don't know what to do with it, after tonight's talk, go back and think about replanning your house. It's funny enough, while taking that photograph, it was the chap on the left who came out and said, "What are you taking this photograph?" Non-metals sort of comment about using crazy paving. Right. Then comes the Second World War, of course, and there's a great loss of the housing stock as a result of bombing. People got bombed out of there, so actually came things like this sort of they often walked home to sort of come out of their shelter as destructions. Reminding us now, of course, the present context, seeing all those terrible scenes of rape, homes. And of course, the 1944 answer to that, the temporary housing project Winston Churchill. She said he would build 1,400 homes in the next 5 years. And he would use prefabrication as a means of doing it, into the 2000s. Churchill's idea about doing it as a 5-year plan was that by 1950, both the local authorities and the British private building industry would be back on their feet, and they would be back into the private houses. And as local authorities did get going, they tended to use the prefab style as a basis for the houses they built. So we've got a lot of houses from the early 50s that are quite indistinguishable design from prefabricated houses that were prefab source. So you get houses like this in Wolverhampton, Stones Estate, they date from 1951. It was actually one built in the 1951 exhibition. South Bank, and we have that in the porch with tubes. And we call these the iron houses. What's some of these up? Still little pockets of them. So while I'm going around taking photographs like this, I want to notice again, not just the fact that if you take a left and a right, you have one council house more as built, and one on the right already approved, or somebody taking notice of. That's the owner. The other thing I need to notice are the really white backs. You see this little back next to the door, the one on the right. But for some reason, I got distracted by talking to the owner. I should have taken a picture of that back because it says this house is Wolverhampton's 5,000 council house. It was opened by Sir John Blunt on his return from Everest, 14th of June, 1992. So if we read John Blunt's diary, 2nd of June, says, oh, they've reached the top of Everest. Blast, I've got to get back to Wolverhampton to open the and there were pictures in the paper of him and the other keys to the first and so on. And I still go around trying to pick up facts on people's houses. I found quite a few little flats for best kept garden awards and things like that. Lots of reflection of the community life in these houses.